Well, Jim gave the nice introduction, so I won't bore you with that. Plus, there's the embarrassingly long bio in there, which read if you want. But he pretty much gave you all the highlights. Really, what I'm here to talk about, I've been doing this clinic for 4 or 5 years now. Something I thought of as I was doing some of the different orchestral and band type gigs that I've done in the past was that the years that I've done this and the years that I've been in school and done this in other schools, think about what you normally hear like when you're walking around the hall, like near a percussion studio or near percussion practice rooms. Like, what is the stuff that's coming out of the practice room? I'd say 95% of what I hear is marimba playing, lots of keyboard, lots of xylophone, lots of bells, and lots of snare drum, sometimes some timpani, but very, very rarely do you hear anybody practice cymbals, bass drum, what we call the auxiliary instruments or the accessory instruments. I can tell you, and that was true for me most of my career, most of my education, I spent time studying what I kind of call the sexier instruments. Most of my performance career, I've spent time playing what I would consider maybe the less sexy instruments. The things that we don't really practice very much, but the reality is, most of the time if I'm playing in an ensemble, even when I've had full-time jobs, I spend more time playing cymbals, tambourine, the auxiliary stuff than anything else. And that's not to any way belittle the importance of playing keyboard and playing snare drum, because you gotta do that, you gotta be good at that. But especially, like, even if you're not necessarily considering a performance career, maybe you're gonna be a teacher or an educator, but you still wanna perform on the side, being good and having an approach to these instruments is a really, really big deal. It's really important. You show up the first time you want to play in an orchestra as a sub or something, they're not going to give you snare drum, they're going to give you a triangle part. They're going to give you, like I said, auxiliary stuff. So I kind of want to talk about an approach to that. There's a lot of pretty thorough detail in the first couple of pages, is kind of explanation of some of the points that hopefully we'll get to today. But you don't have to look at it now, but if you want, in the next few days, maybe take a look as you're sort of processing some of this stuff. Also, this is clearly, I mean, I'm an alum, so I remember it's pretty relaxed vibe here. So if, as we go along, if you guys have questions about things you see, techniques, approaches, things I say, raise your hand. We'll definitely get to a few between each piece. And then if there's time at the end, we can do a little more extended Q&A. But feel free at any time, other than when I'm playing, to sort of chime in. And actually, later on, I'm going to take a couple of volunteers as well. So. The first excerpt, probably the most famous tambourine excerpt, Carnaval Overture by Dvorak. There's sort of some descriptions about things that I think are significant about that. And try to make sure as you're following along, if you know the music really well, feel free to look up the entire time. But kind of make sure if you're following along in the music, just glance up every now and then, because I'll probably do some things that you haven't seen before on tambourine. Carnival's probably the most traditional of the ones I'm going to do as far as techniques go. The biggest thing there really is just negotiating the rolls, and you're going to play things up in the air, whether you're going to use knee-fist technique, which I did for most of this stuff. For me, it's just a more articulate, more powerful way to play. But generally speaking, if this piece is slower than that, I'll probably hold it up in the air and try to play everything like this, because conductors love that. I may think I sound better like this, but I also, you'll read this in the little description too. Conductors are the boss. They're the ones that ultimately are making the decision, so you got to please them. Please yourself, but also please the conductor. So, and that's true at the education, at the college level as well. So, any questions so far? Great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We'll play and then chat. I had this weird thing, which I'm sort of reminiscing as Jim and I were talking. I had this strange thing towards the end of my freshman year, into my sophomore year, where kind of disgusting, really, but like I kind of like lost some of the padding on my thumb. So what I was doing there generally are sort of blanketly referred to as thumb rolls. And a lot of people that play this excerpt will use their thumb and do a roll and then kind of release with the heel of your palm. Most of you have probably at least attempted that at some point. I literally like lost most of the padding on my thumb. It was kind of disgusting. And so I could no longer really get the role that I wanted. So it was actually a couple of years as I started taking professional auditions, I really struggled with this excerpt. And my solution to that, if you looked up, you can see, was to do a finger roll, basically, my middle finger, and I'm actually supporting it with my thumb, which usually I would use for like a softer roll, like there's a Carmen excerpt that's kind of famous for that. And I finally just stumbled upon, if I can just actually release the sound, release the tambourine on my leg, I get a really nice pop. And I've done it professionally a couple times, and actually I found the conductors like that sound more. It's more consistent. That's a cool visual effect, definitely if you can do it like this, but I found it, generally speaking, a little more tricky to be consistent with it. So that was, for me, a lot of this clinic really, especially about the tambourine, is about finding ways to please myself and to play things maybe like I would do it in an audition, but also to do it in a way that works and is viable on the job, on the gig site. So really what this whole clinic is about is sort of reconciling how you sound by yourself and how you sound in the ensemble. So, any questions about that? Great. Let's move on. This one, bear with me, I gotta kind of start from the top, so I'll pick it up in progress. Ready? Carmen, very famous. Actually, that might even be more famous than Carnaval Overture. More people would recognize that, I would say. I actually had the good fortune of playing this entire opera just a few weeks ago. And one thing you don't realize when you've been playing the Carmen suites by Bizet for years, like in the orchestra, is that those suites have pretty much all of the percussion from the entire opera in it. And you think, man, Carmen's cool, it's loaded with percussion, it's loaded with rest. Tons and tons. I mean, it's opera, that's pretty standard, but all of these big parts that we think are just interspersed throughout Carmen are really very isolated. So, you know, one of the things that I really want to talk about today is that I've, over the years, sort of learned to spend a lot of that downtime on gigs, and, you know, including when I was in school, and actually thinking about, you know, taking advantage of the fact that I'm resting and not just letting my mind wander, but actually thinking about different ways to approach it. I think people ask me all the time, like, what's your favorite percussion instrument? And the answer is always that I really don't have one. Like, if I don't play triangle for a couple months, I enjoy coming back and playing triangle. A lot of people wouldn't say that, but I kind of like all of them. But I think probably above all, just the approach to tambourine and some of the different things that you can do, different ways to make sounds. It's really a lot of fun. It's worth spending some time thinking about it during a rehearsal, or even, you know, like I said, spend some time in a practice room. If you guys work on excerpts, I know at the very least you're doing them for placement auditions. Is that once a year now or twice a year? Once a year. So at the beginning, it was the same when I was here. And I mean, when I was here, I was a little more interested in the orchestral audition track. That's not for everybody, I certainly understand. But like I said, you at some point in your life as a performer, on whatever level it is, you're going to need to have an approach to these instruments. So keep that in mind. Any questions about